Hello and welcome to the Racers HQ podcast. I'm your host, Matt Murphy, and joining me on the line tonight, I've got our co-host, Erik Strawn. How you doing tonight, Erik?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm awesome, man. I'm really excited about tonight's episode. And our special guest, we got Bobby Christensen. Bobby, how you doing tonight?
Doing wonderful.
Awesome, man. Well, we cannot wait to hear from you. Really exciting racer, real champ. But before we get started, I don't know, we could do a quick round of what you're drinking tonight. I stuck to water tonight. I'm just going to be a good boy. So pretty boring hot take there. Erik, you got anything going on?
I've got a gin gimlet.
A gin gimlet.
With a little bit of Califat syrup in it.
Okay, that sounds pretty fancy. How many ingredients in that? 4?
3. That's
Okay.
Gin. Well, 4. Gin, lime cordial, Califat syrup, and slice of orange.
All right, I like it. Bobby, are you drinking anything tonight?
Oh, I've got some exciting, a sparkling ice. So it's gives me a little bit of a flavor.
I like it. Ah, very good. All right. Well, we're all having a good time. I'm going to skip general garage updates. I actually have a lot of things to talk about, but I really want to talk to Bobby. But I do want to hear, Erik, you went to Hallett last weekend. I really wanted to go to that event. It was the NASA Texas event at Hallett. It always looks like a party. They've got a slip and slide. But you went and helped crew for Todd in his CMC car. Now that he's got a new motor, and just kind of wanted to hear from you. How was the weekend? How did it go?
Yep. So Todd got there. I think he got there Thursday night and did test and tune on Friday by himself. And really, I only had Saturday free, and so I went up there and crewed for him. He was already in the first race by the time I got there, and they started early. Got into the car and looked at it, and had some minor things to look at. The radio wasn't working, but he was by himself for the most of the time, so the radio wasn't an issue. And got him out on track for the second race, and immediately a couple of the other cars clanged together. They towed one of them back into the pits, and it was right there in the pits with us, his pit neighbor. It was a box body Mustang, knocked back, and do need to discuss that a little bit, I guess. There, it was a racing incident. There was the Camaro that came out of turn 9 there at Hallett and spun and was facing backwards. And so Todd and the other guys who were running a little bit behind this guy came up on him, and he decided, instead of sitting and waiting for traffic to pass, he decided he was going to whip a 180 real quick before they got there, and he drove headfirst into the Mustang. So it was, they called it a racing incident. The owner of the Mustang didn't see it that way, and most of the people who saw it happen were just amazed that this guy didn't just sit there and let the traffic go around him, because they were doing it. They were everybody split to go around him, and it didn't work out that way. So,
So was
the track.
Was he stuck on the inside of 9 or the outside? Sorry.
He was in the middle of the track.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, he spun out and was in the middle of the track, and if you have traffic coming at you, don't whip the 180. Let it pass.
Yeah,
it's
tough.
But a bunch of us in the pits, I try to lend a hand right. I'm used to lemons where you jump right in. You got to get back on track immediately. And I was being a little too aggressive and, hey, how about we fix this? How about we jump in on this? And the driver needed to calm down a little bit first. He was steamed. And once he calmed down, a lot of the other guys came together. And I have to say the CMC guys really, there is a lot of camaraderie there. They got an F-150 and a couple of tow straps and started pulling the core support out. And the Camaro was done for the weekend. He hit between his frame horns and bent his frame horns inward, and that kind of finished him off. The Mustang just had a little bit of crunching on the outside of the fender, so we got pulled out. He ran without a fender in the second. He made it the very next race, so
nice.
Worked out for him.
Nice.
And then after that second race, it was the end of the racing for the day, and I did a under the car inspection on Todd's car. And that's something I recommend. If you're at the track and you've got the manpower, get the car up on the jack stands and look under it. And we found his right side exhaust was about to fall off.
Nice.
And so we did a quick fix on the exhaust there at the track. We hit up the race shop and they did some wonderful welding for us. And I went to put it on the car and it didn't quite fit right. I grabbed it was the rearmost exhaust hanger. I went to bend it with a pry bar and it broke again. So, what do you do at that point? I grabbed some safety wire. I safety wired the tail end of the exhaust up, and we put a band clamp on the front end of the exhaust. And he raced the rest of the weekend. Of his 4 races, he finished 11th, 11th, 8th, and 15th. And that's out
All
of
right.
16 cars. But he's a relatively an amateur compared to the rest of the guys. So he did really well, and he set a new personal best there. I think he turned
Yeah, low 130.
130 flat. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, he
nice.
got
Well,
down
good
to
for him.
130. I know.
Nice
Yeah.
job, Todd. How were the ribs and slip and slide and everything Saturday night? Did you stick around for that mess?
I did. I stuck around for the barbecue from Rib Crib, and it was good food. I did not do the slip and slide. I didn't take any swimming trunks, and it was really muddy, and I knew I was going to be driving back to Oklahoma City, so I didn't do the slip and slide.
All right.
And there's a whole nother adventure on the tail end of that with my car not starting and me having to drive back up there Sunday with the truck and the trailer, and lo and behold, the car started and ran fine all the way back home. So
Oh,
what do you do?
wow.
But
Okay.
that'd be a long story if I got into that. So
A whole dang mess. Okay. So your
yeah.
Mustang died on you? Man, this
No, my
oh.
wife's old Chrysler 300.
Oh, the 300 died on you. Man, that's
Yeah,
rough.
yeah.
Sorry, man.
Mustang's running great.
All right, yeah, sure. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate the report out from that Hallett weekend. Real excited for Todd to get back on track, and I really wanted to make that event, but it didn't happen. And we'll see everybody on the 30th. Roland and I are both registered for 629, 630 Comma Racing at Hallett, and we're gonna go after those GT3 class, I think, and see how it goes. So that'll be fun. Um, all right. Well, I think we want to get into talking to Bobby. Bobby, Erik has been talking about how much a cool guy you are for quite some time. He's been wanting to get you on the show, so we really are excited to have you on. I know you're a big time Legends racer up at Hallett, but really wanted to just hear about all your other adventures and maybe kind of, if you could, just kind of tell us how you got into racing. I mean, I think wheel to wheel racing is pretty unique. Is that something that was in your family, or something you got into later in life? Just curious to see how people enter the sport.
Oh, I basically started doing track days at Hallett back in 1983. I had a 944 Porsche that I got at that time, and decided to go see what I could do with it. It's a dog slow car,
Hmm.
but it was a good car to learn how to kind of get around the track in. And we did that for a few years. And my I have 3 sons, and 2 of them have been into going fast forever. And so one of them was doing motocross, and the other was had I think an R1 Yamaha that he was doing road racing with. And so, needless to say, the one doing motocross was getting hurt all the time.
Mm.
And I said, "I'll tell you what." Had a patient. How I got into the racing side. I had a patient that was running Legends cars, and he said, "Come out at I-44 Speedway and drive one of my cars." So I said, "Okay," and went out there, and that's the first time I was in a Legends car, and it was muddy and dirty, and I decided that wasn't very exciting from that standpoint. But I
Hmm.
got hooked up with Mike Dillard and the Legends back in the mid '90s, and so we ended up. I told the boys if they would sell their motorcycles, we would get a Legends car and race it. And at the time, there was a semi-pro, and then I was a master because I was over 40 at the time.
Hmm.
And so they agreed to do that, and that's kind of how we started racing the Legends. Was me basically trying to get them out of racing motorcycles.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I had a similar experience myself. In fact, I just rehad that experience. But yeah, my spouse told me you don't get motorcycles, you get race cars. So very cool. Yeah. Um, so cool. Okay, so mid '90s, you get into Lemons racing. I'm sorry, Legends racing. Much cooler. But you didn't like the dirt circle track. So were they running Legends at Hallett at the time?
They were. Fact is, they started running Legends probably in 1996 at Hallett.
Okay.
And when we started full. We kind of got into it full bore in 1999. And at that time, they were running semi-pro, pro, and masters, and they were running 3 races. There's probably 20 to 30 cars in each class, so there'd be 60 cars
Nice.
at Hallett back then. And so uh, my son was running semi-pro. They were starting, and then I ran masters, so we ran the same car for a while. And then we ended up getting 2 cars. Did a lot of crashing. I mean, there was all these people out there that had very little racing experience, us included. And so there was always somebody, spinning in front of you or
Mhm.
hitting you or us hitting them. But, about every way you could crash, we probably did it. And as gradually we learned, and also it kind of started thinning out those who really didn't know how to drive well or weren't working to learn to be better. They started falling by the wayside, as I'm sure you guys have seen over the time. But
Sure.
uh, we didn't go in '99. We in Legends, especially at the time, we run for a world championship. You collect points throughout the year, and then it was at that time. It's always at Sonoma. We would go to Sonoma, and cars would come from all over the world. We went the first time in 2000, and there was 160 cars there. So
Wow.
we had heat races to qualify for the feature race in all 3 divisions. And so it was there's cars from a lot from the United Kingdom, Spain, Africa, Russia. So we had cars from everywhere, very high level of skill. So I think the first year I ran, I ended up like 11th in the feature. And
Wow.
what I learned was that if you can run Hallett well, you can run most tracks pretty well. It's a psychology and the mental aspect of going over a hill and not being able to see what's on the other side is very daunting for a lot of people. And at Hallett, when you're going over there the hill between 8 and 9, you just get used to doing it. And so at Sonoma, especially when you're going into turn 3, you can't see anything. And then when you come up over going into the carousel, it's the same way. And you're catching, back then we were catching air. That was back before they kind of took the hump off at Sonoma. And you'd go over there and you'd be in the air for 4 or 5 feet before you came down, and then you had to crank it to the left and keep from sliding off the carousel. So we probably, having run Hallett, gave us an advantage. And then the other people who ended up being there that really had an advantage were the guys that came from England. They were, man, they were dyed in the wool, tough racers. And if there was any rain, you could just forget about
Mhm.
winning that race because they're just masters in the rain. So we went there for, I guess, 11 years, and I won. Well, we in one of the championships I won was at Vegas. They moved the race to Vegas, the flat track that's out west of the Speedway. And but I won the world champion in 2003 and 4, and also in 2009 and 10. But my best season ever was 2004. I didn't lose a race. Every race I ended up winning and won the championship race at Sonoma. So it was. I look back at that, and the chances of that ever happening again is like next to zero for anybody. It's just,
Yeah.
and that's when there was a lot of cars, but it was fun, and it just happened to be a season everything went right.
What an amazing accomplishment, man. That is wild. Can you tell us a little bit about the tour? So, obviously you had to build up to the national championship. We won every race. Like, how many races is that? Like in '04, and what were some of the tracks? Maybe some of the highlights.
The well, at that point we ran Sonoma, and we ran. Let's see, ran a I don't know whether Crescent was up and running at that point or not, because NASA races will count also. NASA and Legends were
Mhm.
together, but I think Crescent may have been up and going. We ran Topeka. We ran. Uh, I can't really remember. We did
Hmm.
Hyperfest in. I guess that's in West Virginia,
Okay.
and so we'd try to go different places and run and accumulate points, but also places was fun to go.
Yeah.
And we ran at Road Atlanta. We ran
Oh,
a race
wow.
at Road Atlanta, which is a hoot. There's a picture as you come up over 11. As I come over, there's about 3 or 4 inches of light underneath the tires on all four tires. So that was back, at Sonoma and Road
I
Atlanta
got to ask real quick though. I have to ask real quick. How long is that back straightaway in Atlanta in a Legends car?
a long time. And especially if you're out there running with NASA and there's, say, a Porsche Cup car on there with you and some stuff like that,
Hmm.
man, you're sitting there and they're just flying by you, and you got to be on your toes. It's they really come by quick. But it is. I'm thinking 2/3 to 3/4 of a mile, something like that. It's a
Yeah.
long straightaway.
Yeah. Um, yeah, what is so maybe we can back up even a little bit more. I think most people know what a Legends is, but maybe we could dig in a little bit. So it's a tube frame, like what is it, half scale or three-quarters scale, like
It's
34
5/8
Ford,
scale.
5/8
5/8.
scale.
Yeah, right. That's what it is. It's basically the cars were developed. Really, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was the development driver for these cars back in the early 90s. There's lots of
Hmm.
videos when he was like a teenager driving these things and doing the development of them. But they were developed in Charlotte as kind of a series for uh, people who are looking to go into NASCAR,
Hmm.
and that was the whole purpose behind them. Then mainly uh, they didn't even give any thought to road racing in them. They were set up for oval and asphalt and dirt.
Hmm.
So really, Mike Dillard started the road racing with these cars because they were running out at the fairgrounds on the speedway, and it was so ruddy and it was too long a track for them. And so he decided, why don't we give this a shot and try road racing in them? And that's kind of when it all started here in Oklahoma. That's where road racing started for Legends.
Hmm.
But they have a spec tire. They have a sealed engine. You have a weight that you have to be greater than, which has always been 1,300 pounds with driver and whatever fuel you've got left over at the end of the race.
Hmm.
Right now, they're running a Hoosier tire, and they've gone to a three-cylinder with a 5-speed sequential, where no, a 6-speed sequential, where we had always run a 5-speed on the old Yamaha 4 cylinders.
Gotcha. And then, so they seem real quick, but I assume they top out pretty early. I mean, what kind of top speed are we talking?
Well, our cars are outlaws now, so
Hmm.
we're going really fast. We were running somewhere around 150 to 160 at
Oh,
Daytona at the Nationals, and uh, but a regular Legends car will top out probably 125, and depending on where the straight's long enough. But our cars go a lot faster than that. We've got Hayabusa engines, and we're producing another 60 horsepower more than what a regular Legends does.
okay, nice. When did you switch to that? Is that a relatively new format, the Outlaw
Yeah,
format?
we switched in 2016. I was getting bored, and so Bobby Pugh, who owns Stillwater Kawasaki, I told him, find me a Hayabusa, and let's try a Hayabusa engine, and it's lightweight, it's very durable, it's water cooled, fuel injected, and so we started out with the Generation One Hayabusa in my first car in 2016, and I was the first one to ever have one.
Mm.
And so then Bobby built one for himself. Then Brian Pogue, who we raced with, Jacob Dent, and we've got now about 5 or 6 of the cars. But we just developed it, learned how to set up the motor mounts, the coupling for the drive shaft. We still use the basic Legends car. We use the same brakes. We're now running a Hoosier Slick, which is the better tire than what uh, the other Legends cars have. But we've had to basically reinforce, have to gusset the cage and the frame, and because we're just putting out a lot more horsepower, a lot more G-force.
That's wild, man. Yeah, I can't imagine a Hayabusa powered. I mean, I can't even imagine driving a Legends car, much less a Hayabusa powered one. That
Oh,
sounds,
you'd do just fine. I mean,
yeah.
you'd get in it, and it's like, what is everybody says, what's it like? And I say initially, think of a big go-kart. If
Hmm.
they're twitchy, they're short wheelbase, you got to really drive them. You got to really stay focused, and it's just a matter of learning how to handle the steering, the way the car is going to turn. But yeah, you'd do fine in
Yeah.
one.
So you mentioned there for the circle track stuff, there was kind of a NASCAR feeder. Now on the road racing, this INEX brand, I mean, have they been the organizing or the kind of the spec for the whole time, or is that
They
relatively
have,
new?
and at
Okay.
Hallett right now, there's the INEX race that they run the features on every time Coma runs.
Hmm.
And so that is, they run regional races there, plus their monthly races that are for points that people are seeking the championship. I quit running for the championship in 2011.
Okay.
We just decided we wanted to go out and not be chasing points and not have to worry about all that stuff. We'd done that enough.
Yeah. And are your sons still involved with it?
Part of the time, I've got a grandson now that's running, and
Okay.
he is. Fact is, we were working on his 2 cars today, and he's come along pretty well. He started last August. We did a number of VIP days, and I would lead, follow, and kind of work with him, and he runs the simulator some. And so he finishes the first one behind us now. And so he's now turning 25s at Hallett. He's doing pretty well. So we I think our track record we broke the last time we were up there. We did a 121.9 in our car.
Okay. Yeah. That's quick for sure. Is that in the Outlaw?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Now
And what
a
are the
regular,
INEX guys running? Yeah.
they're the INEX guys, Chris Larson and Liam Fleming, who are probably the 2
Yeah.
top drivers that are there. They will run. They'll get down to high 23 in qualifying, but in the race they usually run high 24s and 25s. But the rest usually run in 27s.
Okay. Okay. So I mean that's on par with what I'm targeting in the in my Miata, like GT3 stuff, but that's cool. Yeah. No, it's and they're a hoot to watch, man. I love watching those races. You guys are right in there and there's usually some carnage, I feel like.
There often is. Usually with us, there is not because
Mhm.
we have enough experience. We don't like to crash and don't like to fix them after we crash. So,
Mhm.
uh, we normally don't have carnage in our. It's uh, I guess we're called the LP class, the Legends
Mhm.
Pro, but we hardly ever will touch anyone. We do a little bump drafting, and we'll bump people down the straights to get them going faster, but that's about all.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to that championship year just real quick. Because I am curious about this. I mean, did you run away with it? Was it like a real mental challenge? Did you
Oh,
have something figured out? Like what was that challenge like? Like how did you do that?
well, it was, I had at that point been doing it for 5 years, and I'd finally figured out more the mental aspect of the game. And
Okay.
you got to finish the race, and how well you did in qualifying was important. You needed to start in the top 10, but to go out and kill a car in qualifying was not a smart thing to do.
Hmm.
Learning how to manage the tires. At the time, we were running a BF Goodrich tire that was very sensitive to tire pressures. And so, if you were pushing one way or the other, you could change tire pressure 1 or 1.5 pounds on the back, one of the back tires, and make a huge difference on what the car did. So we kind of learned how to do it, and we also learned just how to maintain the car, because Legends cars are air cooled, and you get them too hot, you're going to blow the things up.
Hmm.
And so we kind of learned how to keep them cool, how to get the brakes set up on them, and also just be smart. Just, somebody in front of you, you want to get around them, but they're driving, past their limits. You just wait till they make a mistake, and then you take it. But I think at that point, as you guys are well aware, racing is such a muscle memory. You really can't think about stuff. It
Yeah.
has to be within your muscle memory. And when a car spins in front of you, or you get hit in an angle from behind and it starts the car going sideways, you don't have time to think about what to do. You just got to do it. And that's the reason seat time is so important. I worked on getting as many laps as I could
Hmm.
get.
Smart.
And then also, I found going to many different tracks, often we have uh, some of the racers, they just stick at one track and they get pretty good at that track, but then you go somewhere else and they struggle. And so I think you got to go different places, race different places, different speeds, different camber or different, corner uh, cambers. It's just if you get never raced where there's a bunch of off camber or where there's a bunch of banking,
Hmm.
uh, it's been a hoot. I know one of the tracks we ran at back at that time was Gateway. We would run turns 3 and 4 on Gateway, then go into the infield. And first time you're on the banking, it's a totally different animal where you're looking ahead of you, and you can get transfixed at looking just past the nose of the car, and all you see is asphalt.
Right.
And so when you're up on the banking and you're looking, you got to be looking down to your left a long ways ahead. And when people tell me NASCAR drivers, all they're doing is going around in a circle, I got to smile because there's a lot to it.
I got to agree with that, getting around to other tracks, because when we went and ran High Plains Raceway a few years ago, I discovered a hole in my driving. I was not memorizing braking points, and there's two blind hills at High Plains Raceway where you come over the top of the hill and you've got to be on the brakes already. And I blew it, and I went right off the end of the track. And so that really stuck in my mind that I need to start practicing that at the tracks. I tend to be more of a reactive driver. What I can see is how I drive. And at Hallett, with having the blind hill, the blind turn eight, uh, I was really trying to work on getting my breaking point set in my mind ahead of time. So, and then the one time we raced at night, or the not the one time, but a few times we've done 24-hour races. I raced at night, and I had to memorize the track during the day. So at night,
Hmm.
I knew where my breaking points were, and I could make the turn. So yeah, that I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So yeah, getting lots of seat time, trying lots of tracks. I think that's super important. I also like driving lots of different types of things, but which
Yeah,
might be a brilliant segue. You don't only drive Legends, right? I when I Google you, Ferrari did a great job of marketing this, but best I can tell, whenever I Google Bobby Christensen, is that you're a Ferrari Challenge driver.
that is right. I've retired from that. It's you know, when I started doing it, we were doing what's called Club Challenge, and that's basically like TT. It's a time trial. You're running for best lap. And but the big thing that was different about Ferrari Challenge is you have to have a coach in your ear all the time. So my first coach was Anthony Lazzaro, who
Mm.
has won Daytona 2 or 3 times back in the 90s and early 2000s. And he was a Ferrari driver. He drove the 330 Ferrari, uh, open car. And so it was a different world of how a professional race driver thinks and telling you what to do, how to react, where to go. And it becomes a matter of inches everywhere. If you're
Mm.
not at the edge of the track, if you're not using every inch of the track going out, and the V box and all the data in the car is basically will not let you lie. Well, I went through that corner flat out. And they go, well, no, you were off the throttle 3 times going through that corner.
Yeah.
And the time it takes to get your foot from the accelerator to the brake, or the brake to the accelerator, it was very helpful to me on learning the tiny increments, the little things. And so then in 2022 I decided to go for it all and run the circuit. And I was the oldest guy out there by probably 7 or 8 years.
Mhm.
And age does have a big factor in your reactions and things like that. But because of my history, they put me in shell class, which are shell am, shell, uh, 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 Torfia, am, Torfia, the pro. But I was running against all of these young bucks that are 25 years old and are spending their life in a race car.
Yeah.
So it was it was fun, it's a learning experience. Uh, I ended up winning the Masters class at Daytona. Daytona is one of my better tracks. I can get around Daytona very well. And the track that I did the worst at was Sonoma, which
Hmm.
was a track I'd run more, but they were running the chicane at the backside where they took out all the S's and you just basically drop straight down and do a chicane. Totally ruins the track. It's just, I was so frustrated every time because it was kind of a stop and go and all your flow and rhythm was taken away. But the challenge car was it is so different than anything I'd ever driven. And I've driven Miatas, I've driven the street Porsches, and I've done some endurance races in Miata. But it was this thing had 710 horsepower, and the brakes were something that you've never experienced unless you've been in just a very, very sophisticated race car. And it's like when you hit the brakes, it's like throwing out an anchor.
Wow.
Every time for a long time, I was stopped 100 feet before the apex of the corner because I was braking way too early. And but it's the the sophistication of it. It had traction control for the right side, the left side. It also had ABS. And so you got the coach in your ear saying, you need to click down one click on the left side for traction control because it looks like that you're getting a little loose coming out of right-handers.
Hmm.
So it's
And so,
it's
what model of Ferrari was that?
it was a 488
A
challenge.
488.
It was
Okay.
they just started the 296 this year. They're still running the 488 and the 296s together. But next year, the 488s will be obsolete. And that's one of the reasons I got out too. I knew I could sell the car last fall and get out of it without taking too big a hit on the price of the car. So I sold it last fall and
Hmm.
decided it was time to get out.
And I'm curious, I don't know much about those challenge cars. Is that basically taking like a 48 street car and caging it turned into a race car, or is it more like a GT3 car where it's kind of built
It's
from the factory that way?
It's built from the factory. It's way close to a GT3 car. The GT3s are probably at Daytona second and a half to 2 seconds faster than we were.
Okay.
We were running 150s at Daytona. That was my best lap, and that some of the really fast guys were probably down at 147. But a GT3 could probably get around there at 145, 146. So they're very close. The big difference in the GT3 car was the engine was set about 6 inches lower in the car, which
Hmm.
makes a huge difference on the center of gravity. But the rest of it, the aero was different on the front a little bit. The wing was about the same. But the race shop that I ran out of in Van Nuys, California, was had a GT3 too, and we would run with them in the GT3 part of the time, and they're always going to beat you, but not by as much as you might think.
Hmm. That was impressive. Yeah, I didn't know that they were that level. So yeah,
Yeah,
very
well,
cool.
at Daytona up on the banking, we're rubbing 185 to 190 on the road course, so going
Yeah.
really fast.
Yeah. And you, I think if I'm correct, you got a top 10, ninth place in Daytona in
I, I
that
ended up
series.
I got fourth in the race
Fourth.
on
Okay, nice.
Sunday. Yeah, I got ninth on Saturday, and both times there was big wrecks right in front of me that just I had to, yeah, and I finished fifth at Daytona, but the third place car was disqualified, and so that moved me up to fourth. But I've got the video on the last lap. The third place car and the fourth place car got together down on uh, uh, the fourth place car tried to drop down to the apron
Mhm.
between three and four, and he kind of got up into the third place car. The third place car was really pushing him down too much, and anyway, it spun him up. And as I'm coming around, this yellow 488's coming up the track, and on the video, at that point, I was doing 151,
Mm.
and all the I kept it in the throttle or I would have T-boned him. And so I had probably 2 foot up against the rail between me, and the car missed me on the backside by probably 2 foot too. It was just that close. But again, it was like that's where you don't hit the brakes. You gotta take your risk and go for it.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that's scary, but do
Yeah,
you have
well,
that video on a GoPro somewhere?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Nice.
And I've got the other one, which is at Watkins Glen. We were in practice on Friday, and I went up through 3, 4, 5, kind of the S's going up to the top, going to the straight on the back, and I blew out a left rear tire just as I'd gone to fifth gear at 140 mile an hour,
Mm.
and I did a 360 and hit the wall at just over 100 miles an hour, and that was uh, that was really frustrating because Pirelli then limited everybody to 25 laps. We were on lap 30 on those set of tires, and then they said, "Well, it appears that 30 laps is too much on this set of tires," and it damaged the
You
car
you
really
got
bad.
you got to be the guinea pig.
Yeah, I got to be the guinea pig for sure. And the problem was they'd already had within 15 minutes of my crash, they'd already had two other tires that had let go too. One of them hit the wall on the front straightaway, and the other one limped it in. But it was a matter of the tires had about 25 laps in them, and nobody knew that.
That's wild. And that was in Ferrari Challenge.
That was Ferrari Challenge, yeah. But
Wow.
it
So
was
those are Pirelli slicks, I'm assuming, of some sort.
they were, yeah. It's
Yeah.
I've got the rim out in my barn. I said that's the most expensive rim in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. No doubt. Ugh. Um, so you have I don't know if we can talk about this, but you got a few nice cars in your garage, right?
We do. It's And over the years, I like red. I got a '63 split window Corvette that's a blue, kind of a mist blue, I think is what they called it at the time.
Hmm.
But the rest are all red. And so I've got some Porsches and Ferraris. Got a Ford GT. Uh, got a '72 Chevrolet S or C10 pickup that's got a Corvette engine in it. And so all of them are pretty quick, except we do have a Volkswagen van out there now that my son's bought. It's got 62 horsepower and will maybe run 60 miles an hour.
Nice, nice. Eric, I know you've been out to the shop. Any favorites? I
I
know you're
have.
a big car guy.
Oh, well, my dream car has always been a GT40. So the Ford GT is my dream car in the shop. But yeah, it was impressive, but it was interesting. Uh, so we haven't got into this, but the way I know Bobby is from church.
Uh,
And I've got to say, if you're a young guy getting out there wanting to get started racing, be excited and talk up what you're doing, and you'll find that there's a lot of guys who are already racing. And as soon as I mentioned I was racing, Bobby Christensen, Paul Harris, one of the guys I was in reserves with, the JD Nash, they all popped up with they give intel on the tracks. Bobby's the
mhm.
one who told me that Eagles Canyon is 7 straightaways connected by U-turns. Um, Best piece of information I think I got was Paul Harris told me never race a car you can't walk away from.
Mhm.
And then JD Nash built transmissions for Roush Racing, and he gave us tips for Sebring. Um, but so knowing Bobby from church, he and I are on the church mission team, and so we recently went to Chile and did some mission work down there. And we had a wrap up get together a couple weeks ago, and that's when I talked to him and asked him to be on the pod. And all of us guys were looking around the shop, and the one vehicle we all centered on to look at and ask about was the C10 pickup.
Nice.
It's Oklahoma.
Yeah. Is that something
Yeah,
you built,
everybody
or
likes that.
did you
It's
build that one or buy it?
We bought it and then we rebuilt it. Bought it at an auction, and it was it's a beautiful truck. But it had a 350 in it that had a cam. It was almost undrivable. It loped so bad, and it also had the original gas tank and the suspension on it. It was a very good looking car that was scary to drive.
Hmm.
And so we put coilovers, suspension, and put some new sway bars on it. We took the gas tank and put a fuel cell at the back of the car. The fuel tank on that particular truck is right behind the seat, and it's 11 gallons of gas right behind your seat. That if you get hit in the side, it breaks the neck off, and it almost always catches on fire.
Mm.
So we redid that. It's got a new interior. So we did a lot to make it we drive our vehicles. We want them to be safe. We want them to drive well. And so that car now an LS3 in it. It's pretty mild. It's probably 375 horse in that area.
Nice. No, it's a lovely collection of cars. Yeah, very cool looking. I appreciate when Eric shares those with us. Let's see here. I've got another item on our notes here. You've also been partaking in some Porsche track days. So you're a Ferrari guy. You're a Legends guy, but you like your Porsche as well. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, everyone's always asking me which is my favorite car, and I don't really have the favorite. But when it comes to track days, we take the Ferraris out too. We've got a Pista and a Speciale that are very quick track cars, but inevitably you can go out and run 2 or 3 sessions and you start getting all these codes.
Mm.
And there's always something that comes up on those Italian cars. And it's just a pain. They're they're fun to drive, but if you're going to have an hour race, the Porsche will always come out just because something's going to happen to the Ferrari.
Mm.
And so we enjoy taking the Porsches to the track. We've got our track cars. We've got a GT3, a 2014 GT3, 2009 19 GT3 RS, and a 2023 GT4 RS. And the GT4 with the mid-engine, and now it has the same engine as the GT3 RS. It now's very formidable. You get it out
Hmm.
there, and it's quick, it's easy to drive, and so those are the cars that are fun to take to the track. And we always do Veterans Day rides up at Hallett. That's around usually around November 16th, 15th, in that time range, and give veterans rides. And uh, Scott Stevens always says, let's go 75 or 80%, but you get a bunch of guys out there. Usually it's going a little bit more than that, but we have a good time, and the veterans love it. They just they have a great time. So we do some stuff like that. We also do Red Line for Kids, which is taking cars to hospitals where it's basically adolescents and kids that are, some of them have terminal diseases, some of them
Hmm.
are mentally challenged. And there's a group of us that takes cars, and they get to see the cars. They can sit in them and kind of enjoy seeing special kinds of cars.
That's very cool. I like
Yeah,
it.
I got to
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
I've been to a few car shows with I've got the Jaggernaut, which is an utterly terrible race car. But when I took it and showed it, every kid that came up and wanted to sit in it, hey, have a seat in the car. Play, I
yeah,
made sure it was safe and there was nothing sharp to cut themselves on. But put your hands on the wheel and pretend like you're driving. Get mom and dad to get you some pictures of it.
yeah,
And kids just eat that up. They love
yeah,
it. And I wish more of us would take the opportunity to do that with our race cars.
yeah. Kids love the race cars. No, that's awesome. Um, well, very cool. Well, that is a good note too on Porsches being better track cars because I could just imagine. Yeah. But yeah, that you said it's a GT4 RS.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's nice.
So it's out on the road, you can have the ballast open or closed, and it is an extremely noisy car when you're in it. If you got the sport exhaust turned on,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's probably not a car I would want to take across country.
Mm-hmm. Um, you when we were talking earlier, you mentioned a little bit. You're obviously a very seasoned veteran of Hallett Raceway, but you've been trying to get out to the other tracks lately. So, what's got you excited? I mean, like, what's one of your favorite tracks to get out to these days?
Well, we did our national championship NASA race at Pittsburgh International, which is about 70 miles north of Pittsburgh, last September.
Okay.
And I'd really never heard of it until they announced it was going to be where we had the championship race. But it is a really fun track. It flows well, lots of up and down elevation changes, a long sweeping back straightaway, and a lot of fun. And I'd like to go back there again. And the thing I'm going to toot my horn on, I won the national championship last year, which I've never won in NASA. I've gotten second probably 5 times, but I'd never won, and so
Okay.
that track was really fun. We ran mainly with Thunder Roadsters. There's a bunch of Thunder Roadsters out there, which are a little faster than we are,
Hmm.
but those are really neat race cars too. I don't know whether you're familiar with Thunder Roadsters, but
Yeah.
they're
So, what
a
what
neat
class
race.
do you race? Is it a Legends class or?
It's Legends class, but
Okay.
we are so close. We run with the Thunder Roadster, so
Yeah.
we were out there together. They always put us at the back.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I started 29th and ended up, I think, eighth overall. But it's fun. Those guys, it just really makes them mad when you pass them.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
The, the other two tracks we've run, I ran 4 weeks ago at Hedge Hollow, which is in Missouri. It's about 70 miles southeast of Kansas City, and it's a privately owned track. And the NASA race was the first professional race that had been run at the track there, and that was in May. And it was a really fun track too. It's fast.
Yeah.
There was, we had a really good time there, and that was kind of or experience in a challenge car came in handy because the way you had to work the slicks and the way you had to use all the track going into the last turn on the straightaway, it's really going into turn one. We finally, they call it airport, and it's just a huge runoff area. You tap the brakes and downshift once, and then you're on it, and you make this sweeping arch out across all this asphalt that is, probably 100 feet off the track. And
Wow.
so this that was fun. And then we also ran Ozark last year,
Yeah.
and that's that track's a hoot too. We first time I was on it, it was raining, and
Oh boy.
it was just I mean, I don't get scared on racetracks very much, but the first time out, it scared the heck out of me. I had no idea which way we were going to turn when there was at least, I don't know, five, maybe more turns where you come up to the hill and you have no idea whether you're going to go right or left when you get up there.
Hmm.
And but by Sunday, kind of got it figured out. But it's a very long track, and the Armco is pretty darn close. You screw up, you're gonna hit the Armco.
Yeah. No, I've been wanting to get out there, but that does sound wild. Trying to learn that in the rain like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
way
it
to
was.
way
It
to make it through.
almost looked like a circus out there. There was cars going every which direction. It was. Uh, Luckily, we kept them on the track, but it would have been very easy to have got off the track. There was a time trial car that was it was a one of the uh, Formula race cars. It was close. It's probably on that straightaway 160-mile-an-hour car. Anyway, he got screwed up going over what's called a roller coaster, and on the straightaway lost control and hit the fence on the right side, and probably 150 feet down the road hit the fence on the left side. And he was luckily not hurt, but the car was just disassembled. It
Yeah.
just totally disassembled it.
Oh man. Yeah. That's tough. Yeah, it looks like a cool track though. So okay, so we've really got a fast track assessment of your racing career, but it sounds really cool. You've really accomplished a lot, but what's next from here, right? You said that you're running these outlaws now. Like, what does that schedule look like for the year? You going to keep running those next year?
Probably will. I'm an old guy now, and so if right, I've been very fortunate to not have health problems, and my reflexes have stayed good. But at some point, I know that I'm going to have to hang it up. I just don't know whether that's going to be a year or two or five. I'll keep
Hmm.
doing it as long as we're having fun. But plan is next year we're scheduled to run the championship race in Utah, which is a track I've run three times and really like it, even though it's a flat track. So we're going to go out there in September and run for the championship again. We will run probably Ozark in July. We'll run High Plains in August. Then Utah. We will probably, we always run Eagle Canyon at the end of the year. And I think Crescent, there will be an event that we're going to probably run in, I don't know, September, October there too. So, and we'll try to run Hallett whenever there's an open weekend.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful schedule. If you don't mind me asking, you can tell a range, but about how old are you?
I'm 75.
75, still racing. I love it. I like to hear that because sometimes I get spooked like I'm gonna have to quit at 65, but I could do
Now,
75. That sounds
I
good.
mean, it's just a matter of, I get up and spend pretty much an hour every day exercising and trying to
Hmm.
eat right and stay hydrated. And fortunately, my genetics, my parents lived a long time, so that always helps. But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
doing stuff like this, I think, keeps you young.
Yeah.
My dad's just a couple of years older than Bobby, and I look at Bobby and I look at my dad, and they're the two inspirations to me. I remember when I was in high school, I had a friend who told me he didn't want to live past 29. Then you get old and
Mhm.
cranky, blah blah blah. And he ended up committing suicide before he turned 30, which was
Yeah.
a rough deal. And then when I hit my 40s, that's when I started, accomplishing a lot of my life goals. And my dad is, and Bobby are in their 70s, and I see them getting around and doing stuff. And one of the things, I was in the Air Force for a long time, and I always preach to my airmen, take care of your body because God only gives you one. And I see that, if I take care of my body, I can be, in 20 years, 25 years, I can still be doing this stuff. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm looking forward to that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got told just a quick story. So went on a weird tangent a couple days ago. Somebody said they were going to buy my Miata from me. They were going to give me a good price. I was going to sell it all and go karting. And I had a nice long conversation with my wife last night, and she's like, "In amateur karting, you break your ribs and your head and your hands. Like, I don't want you going like pro-am karting. Like that's not happening. Stick with a caged vehicle, and let's keep doing this for a long time." So uh, I think I'm going to stick with it then. So
I think that's wise advice. Uh, I've only seen one fatality at a racetrack, and it was in a Formula Mazda,
yeah,
and the front wheel of another car got in the cockpit, and I just I I guess I'm a fraidy cat because I don't want anything getting inside the car with me. I want a nice solid roll cage with the top, and I don't want to get hurt out there.
for sure. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's very inspiring. So, um, Bobby, this has been awesome. Really inspiring story. What an amazing career, and you're still after it. You're still going after championships. I love it, man. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on our show tonight. Um, do you have anybody you'd like to give a shout out to? Any sponsors, any charities, anybody else you're interested in making sure that our listeners know about?
Well, Vision Source is our eye care clinic, and that's part of my sponsorship.
Hmm.
And also Bobby Pugh and Brian Pogue are two that we do stuff together. And Brian Pogue's shop is where I basically I've been out there the last 2 or 3 days working on cars. Bobby Pugh basically is our engine person. He keeps our engines tuned, rebuilt, replaced when they need to be. So without those two, I wouldn't be able to do it. And I'm hoping my grandson Jonathan Christensen can continue what he's doing, and maybe one day I'll just be watching him and having a grandson do it.
That's awesome, man. Well, we will definitely keep an eye on that space, and I'm sure we'll see you at the track soon. I mean, it sounds like you're making a lot of events that we do, and a lot of other cool ones too. Erik, any shout outs for you? Any exciting events coming up?
Just as always, when I first got started racing, I was looking at buying some safety gear, and I told my mom I was going to go racing, and she paid for my first Hans. So, shout out to my parents for looking out for my safety.
There you go.
Look out for yourself and wear your safety gear, even when you're just wrenching.
Yeah, that's smart. Erik, what kind of safety gear should we always be wearing when we're wrenching?
It's like you've heard this from me before. If you got that grinder up, put those goggles on, put those earplugs on, and
That's right.
I've got tinnitus, and it's loud enough that I can hear it right now, even with the headphones on, talking to you. Wear your hearing protection, wear your eye protection, wear gloves,
Hmm.
wear your
That's
safety
what's up.
gear.
That's right. Well, guys, again, I can't say it enough. Awesome podcast. I am. I'm going to see everybody at Hallett end of the month. I promise. I am so excited to go racing against Roland Vaughn. Roland and I started road racing together. I don't know what, dang near 15 years ago, and all thanks to Erik. It's Erik's fault because he wore a lemon shirt to the
Yep.
autocross. But but yeah, we're finally going to get some wheel to wheel action. And so, yeah, we'll see you guys at Hallett probably by the time we have another podcast. And aside from that, like and subscribe, rate and review. Maybe steal your grandma's phone and subscribe to the podcast on her phone. I don't care. Whatever you got to do to get us some more listeners. But I think it's working. And yeah, guys, we'll see you at the track. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.